Hi folks, this is Vardhan from Edureka. In today's session, I will show you how to create a Salesforce application. I hope everyone in the session can hear my voice and see my screen. Please acknowledge, guys. Yeah. Swati says yes. Rahul says yes. Rakesh can see my screen. Great, so it seems like everyone is able to see my screen and hear my voice. Now, let me get started. Salesforce is a platform which gives developers numerous possibilities to create custom applications. And in today's session, I will be creating an application to maintain student records, which can be used by tuition centers. Now, before we get started, let me show you the agenda for today. I will first talk about the building blocks of a Salesforce application, after which will be a hands-on session where I will show you how to create an application to maintain student records. Now, during this hands-on session, I will show you how to set up the app environment, how to configure the tabs and profiles, how to create an object, how to set up the data types of fields, how to create a relationship between objects, and how to enable security in Salesforce. Let's get started. To learn how to create a Salesforce application, you must first know what are the components involved and what role each component plays. Tabs, profiles, objects, fields, records, and relationships are the building blocks of a Salesforce application, and no application is complete without any of them. Before I talk about these components, let me ask you one question. What do you think is a Salesforce application, and what exactly do we use it for? Okay, so Rakesh is telling a Salesforce application is used to manage customer data. Great, Rakesh, you're correct. Using a Salesforce application, we can manage customer records. We can store all the data on top of objects, and these objects can be easily managed and accessed by tabs and profiles. But do you know what are tabs? Tabs are like shortcut links which can be used to access objects and customer records. In any Salesforce application, you can customize the tabs that you want to see and access. What about profiles? Profiles are the settings which are associated with each user. Profiles control what a user can view and modify in a Salesforce application. Using profiles, I can ensure that users who are assigned to a particular profile can only view and modify certain objects. Now that takes us to the next component, objects. These objects are the most important components in a Salesforce application because they are the database tables where the actual data is stored. There can be many objects in one Salesforce application. Tabs can be used to easily access these objects in any application, and profiles can be used to control which of these objects are accessible. Now what about fields and records? Fields and records are part of objects. Each column in an object is a field. Fields are the individual entities in any object, and records are just groups of fields. All the data fields about one single customer together are called records. Now let me show you an example of this. This whole table can be related to that of an object. Each cell is a field, like Bangalore, like history. All of these are separate fields, and a group of fields make a record. As you can see here, the different details about the student are stored in different fields, and all these fields together make up a record of one student. Okay, let's get back to our slides. Now this takes us to the final building block of a Salesforce application. Finally, what is a relationship? Similar to database relationships, relationship in Salesforce is used to link one or more objects. Links can be established by relating the common fields in different objects. Now let me explain this with an example. This is the schema diagram of the student application which I created earlier. These are the different objects in the application, and these lines represent the relationship between the different objects. This is the student data object which contains the personal details about the students, like the student name, the student ID, their phone number, email ID, their country, and the college they go to. We have a second object called marks, which will contain the marks scored by these students in different subjects. And there's a third object called college, which will contain the college name, the college phone number, and the college address. And then there's the fourth object called professor, which will contain the name of the professor and the professor number. And then there's a fifth object called course, which contains the name of the different courses, who is the professor for that course, and which students have opted for that course. As I said earlier, there's a relationship between these objects. The relationship between the student data object and the marks object is that the name and the details of the student will be present in this object, and the marks he has obtained in different subjects will be present in this object. Similarly, the relationship here is that the student name and details will be here, and the college he goes to and the college details will be present here. Now there's a question from a participant. Rakesh is asking, what is the point in creating relationships in the first place? Okay, Rakesh. Thank you. That's a very good question. Let me explain this question with respect to my example. This is the object where I will be entering the details of the different students. Let's say I have to add details of 100 different students, and out of which 20 are from the same college. Now it is not ideal to enter the same college name, the same address and the same phone number of the college 20 different times for 20 different students, right? So instead I can just link that college name to the college details which will be present in a different object. This is how relationships can be useful because they help us to create links between different objects. Okay, so does anybody else have any doubt with respect to relationships? Great, so I'm going to move on. Alright, I was talking about relationships. A relationship is always between one or more objects, okay, where one object is a parent object and another object is a child object. And the relationship will always be represented by a curved line or an arc like this. The loop here represents a child object, and in this relationship, this marks object is a child object and student data is the parent object, okay. But in this relationship, student data is the child relationship and this is the master. Okay, so I have another question here. Swati is asking, how do you choose the parent object and how do you choose the child object? Swati, I was just about to get to that question. You will understand that when I talk about the different types of relationships. There are three types of relationships. One is the master detail relationship, the second is the lookup relationship, and the third is the junction relationship. A master detail relationship is a 1:1 relationship which has one parent but many children. Here the parent object controls the child object and this relationship supports cascade delete. Now let me tell you what is cascade delete with an example. Cascade delete means that if I delete any record in the parent object, then the linked record in the child object will also get deleted. For example, supposing I delete the record of a particular student from my student data object, then that student's marks will also be deleted from this object. That's the meaning of cascade delete. Now if there's a cascade delete, it means that there will be no empty fields in this object. And the child object here inherits the sharing settings, security settings and the owner settings from the parent object. A lookup relationship is also a 1:1 relationship in which there is one parent and many children. But the parent object here does not control the behavior of the child object and there is no cascade delete here. So as per my example, college is the parent object and student data is the child object. If I delete any record from the college object, then the students who belong to that college will not be deleted from this object. That is what is meant by no cascade delete. No cascade delete also means that there can be empty fields in this object. And the child object here does not inherit any of the sharing settings, security settings and the owner settings from the parent object. The third type of relationship is called the junction relationship. It is a many-to-many relationship which is a combination of two master detail relationships. As per our example, there is a relationship between student data and course. This is a master detail relationship. And similarly, there's another master detail relationship between course and professor. Here there are two parent objects and one child object. The course is the child object and student data and professor are the parent objects in both the relationships. Since it's an extended master detail relationship, there cannot be any empty fields in the child object. So according to our example, every course here will have at least one professor and one student. In fact, there can be many professors in combination with any number of students, thus forming a many-to-many relationship. So I think this explains how to choose the parent object and how to choose the child object. So I have another question here from Gaja. He's asking, will there be a cascade delete and a junction relationship? Gaja, yes. Since there are two master detail relationships, there will be a cascade delete even if you delete one record from the parent object. Alright? Great, Gaja. I'm glad you understood. Now let me get started with my demonstration. I will be creating the application on the Salesforce developer org by logging into my Salesforce developer account. Salesforce provides a 30-day free trial. So if any of you guys are interested in creating your own applications, then you can do so by setting up your own Salesforce developer accounts. Now let me show you where you can create your own Salesforce developer accounts. So I'm going to Google developer Salesforce. And here we go. This is the Salesforce developer platform and you can sign up by clicking here. Since I already have a Salesforce developer account, I'm going to log into my account. Okay. This is my username. This is my force.com developer platform. Okay. This indicates the username and this student app here represents the application I'm currently logged on to. Okay. So if I click on this drop down, I can switch between the different applications that are currently existing on my Salesforce org. So if I click on student force here, it takes me to another application. And this was the application on which I created the different objects and set up the relationship. And I showed you the same schema diagram earlier in the slides. Now, let me create a similar application from the scratch. Okay? And whether you're going to create a new application or whether you're going to create a new object, you got to always go to setup. So once you click on setup, you get this window. And on the left hand side, there is something called build. Under build, there is create. So if you click the drop down here, you get other options. So here you can create your own applications, objects, tabs, and other things. Okay, so since I want to create a new application, I'm going to click on this. Now these are the already existing applications in my developer environment. Now I'm going to create a new application by clicking on new. Now what I'm creating is a custom application. So I'm going to click on custom app and then next. And then let's enter the application name. Let's give student application here. Okay. And the description is that this app contains the details of the students. Okay. Let's click on next. So similar to Facebook and Twitter, you can have your own image for your application. All right. You can insert an image and then click on next. And then you can add your own tabs to your application. What you see here, these are the different tabs that are available for this application currently. So you can choose whichever tabs you want for your application. So currently there's only the home tab available for my application. Okay. And supposing I want to add any of the tabs from here, I can just click on the tab here and say add. And if I want to remove them, then I can just click on remove here. So it's as simple as that, guys. Okay. Now let's click on next. Let's say I want the application to be visible to all the profiles. All right. And I'm going to click on save. So as you can see, the new application called student application is created successfully. Okay. Now I can access this application by clicking on this drop down and choosing student application from here. Now this is the home tab of my application. All right. I can create new objects and add the objects over here. Now let me show you how to create objects. So to create an object, you got to click on setup. Similarly, go to create and click on objects here. Okay. And now you can create your own custom object. I'm going to click on new custom object and enter the name of the object. Now let me go back to my slides for a minute. Okay. This is the schema diagram. As you can see, there are 5 different objects here. Okay. This is the main object called the student data, which will contain the personal detail of all the students. And then there are other objects which contain the college details, the professor details, his course details, and the student's marks. Okay. Now first let me set up this object and create the different fields here. So the object name was student data. Okay, let's add the description as this object contains the student information. All right. Then you can choose the record name here. So let's say I want to identify the different students in this object by their roll number or their student ID. Okay. So let's rename this field as student ID. And let's choose the data type as auto number. Auto number means the numbers in this field will get auto generated. All right. So every time I add a new record to this object, this field will get auto generated. Now I want the format to be in std -0 within brackets. Now remember that I'm giving 0 within curly brackets because this number will be changing. So every time I add a new record, the number here will keep getting incremented, and the student ID will be in this format. It will be std-number. All right. Let's set the starting number as 1. Okay. And now let me just give save. So as you can see, my student data object is successfully created. If you see here, there's already a standard field in the name of student ID. This is the field that I created while setting up the object. Okay. Guys, now if you look at the slides here, you'll find that there are other fields like student name, their phone number, their email ID, and the country and the college they are part of. Okay, now let's add these fields to this student data object. Okay, let's add the custom fields by clicking on new here. Now you have to choose the data type of that field. Okay, supposing I'm storing the name of the student, then I have to check on text here. Supposing I'm storing phone number in this field, then I can click on phone and then choose. Okay. So first I want to store the name of the students. Okay. So I'm going to click on text and give next. Let's enter the field label here. Let's say student name and the length to be 20 letters. Okay. The description is the name of the student. The description is not compulsory, guys. Okay. And let's give next. With all the default settings, I'm going to give next, and I'll click on save now. So as you can see, a custom field is created here in the name of student name. Let's create more custom fields for phone number, email address, and the country they are part of. Okay. To choose the phone number, I'm clicking on the data type of field as phone and then clicking on next. I'm going to enter the field label here as phone number. Let's say next. And let's click on next again and then save this. So you can see the phone number here. Now let's add the next field here. Let's add the email address. So I'm going to choose the data type as email and then click on next. The field name is going to be email, and let's check on this. Let's make this a compulsory field. Okay. And then let's also make it a unique field, as in no two students can have the same email address. So I'm going to click on these two and then click on next. And then I'm just going to keep the same default settings and click on next again and click on save. Now we have the three fields here. Okay. Let's add the country field now. Let me click on new again and click on text and click on next and say field as country and give the length as 20 characters. Okay. I'm going to click on next and I'm going to click on next again and then save this. As you can see, these four fields are created in my object. Okay. Now let's add a record to this object and see how it looks. Let's add the object to my tabs first. To add the object over here, I need to again go to create. Under create, I have to go to tabs. Let's add new custom tabs. Okay. I'm going to click on new and choose the object name and choose a color for that object. I'm going to click on next. I'll click on next again. I'll click on save. As you can see, the student data object is visible here. Okay. If I click on this, I can add the records to this object. Currently, there are no recent records. Okay. I'm going to click on new to add a new record. Let's say the student name is Sam. Okay. The phone number is this and his email address is sam@gmail.com. Okay. And I can write the country as USA or India or anything. Okay. Now let's save this. Great. Now, as you can see, the student ID for this person is student 1. Okay. His name is Sam. This is his phone number. This is his email address, and this is the country he is from. Now I can customize this further. I can create a pick list. What pick list means is that for a particular field, I can get the person to choose from predefined options. For example, take this country field. Okay. I can assign predefined countries for this field and get the person to choose only one from those list of countries. Okay. Let me show you how that's done. I'm going to go back to the object through setup and then edit that object. Okay. Create objects. This was the object I created, students data. Now here, this was that field which I was talking about. Okay. Now let me modify this data type as a picklist data type. Let me go to edit and say change field type over here. If I change the field type, I come back here. Okay. I can change the data type of that field to picklist, and I'm going to click on next after that. And here I can enter the values of the different countries that I want. Supposing I add countries like USA, England, France, and Germany, and then if I save this, then I'll have predefined options of only these 4 countries to choose from. Okay. Let me show you by adding another record. From students data, I'm going to say add another record. Student name is going to be Kate. Her phone number is this. Her email ID is kate@gmail.com. And now when I choose the country, as you can see, there's a drop down and I can only choose one of these countries. I cannot have my own country. Say I cannot write Argentina or Brazil here because they are not part of the pick list. Now let me say England and then save this. So this student is created with this student ID. All right. If I click on the student data object, you can see both the student IDs here. Now on clicking the student data object, you want to see more than just seeing this student data ID, then you can do so by editing this view. Okay. Now let's say create new view over here. If I click on this, I'm going to give the view name as student details. All right. Now if I come down, I can add the fields that I want to display when I click on students data. Currently only student ID displays. Now if I choose student name, phone number, email address and country and then add this, then all these details will be displayed. Now let me push student name on top. Okay, so now these details will be displayed in this order. All right, I'm going to save this and go back to students data and click on go. As you can see, this is the student ID, this is the student name, and the country the students are from. Now this is the customization that I can do from an object perspective. Now if I go back to the slides, you can see that there are 4 other objects. Okay, now let me create all these 4 objects and the fields which are part of these objects. There's one object called college which is not created in this object. I have not set this up because I have to create a relationship and a lookup to the college object. Now since I have not created the master object already, I cannot create the lookup without the master object. So I'll create this field later. But in the meanwhile, I'll create these 4 objects and show you how to set up objects and set up relationships. Now let me go back to my developer environment. Okay, this is my home tab and I'm going to set up the marks object now. Okay, I'm going to click on setup. Let's say create. Let me go to objects. I'm going to click on new custom object here. I'm going to give the object name as marks. Okay, now let's give the record name as serial number. All right, and the data type as auto number. Now I have to set the display format for that. I'll put 0 in curly brackets and then give the starting number as 1. Okay, I'm going to save this now. Great. So my custom object called marks is successfully created. All right, now I have to add the custom fields to this object. If you go back to my presentation, you'll find that the fields here are the student ID, the student name, and the subjects in which they scored marks. Okay. Now, since the records in this marks object will contain the marks of the students from here, I can create records such that the marks of each student is stored with respect to a student ID. Okay. Now let me go back to my developer environment. Okay, and I'm going to create new fields here where I'm going to set a relationship. I will set up master detail relationship between the student data object and the marks object. Now the relationship from the marks object will be to the student ID in this object. Okay, so I'm going to choose master detail relationship and click on next. Related to means I'm saying this object is going to be related to the parent object students data. Okay, I'm going to click on next. Let's give the field name as student ID and then click on next. Okay, I'm going to click on next again. I'm going to click on next once more and then save this. Now I'm going to add more custom fields here. Let's add new custom fields here. I'm going to add new fields for the 2 subjects, and those subjects will be in the format of number. So I'm going to choose number data type and then click on next. Okay, the field name is going to be subject 1. Length is going to be this, and I'm going to click on next. Okay, I'm going to click on next again and then save. I'm going to create another custom field for the subject 2. I'm going to click on number, click on next after that, and then give the field name as subject 2 and then click on next again, and then save this. Now that this object is set up, before I add records to this object, let me add that object to my tabs here. So I'll go to create tabs. I'll say new custom tab. I'll choose the object as marks and I'll choose a color here. I'll click on next. I'll click on next again and then click on save. Okay, so the object is visible here. Okay, so if I click on marks, I come to the marks object where there are no records currently. Let me add new records here. When I click on new, it says let me do a lookup here. So if I click on this, I go to the student data object and I can click on one of these IDs and add their marks. Supposing I want to add the marks for the student 1, I can click on student 1 and say the marks in first subject, say 47. Second subject, he's got 67. Okay, I'm going to save this. Now my record is created. If I click on marks object, you will see that this student with the ID of student 1, he scored 47 marks in the subject 1 and 67 marks in subject 2. Now let me add another record here. Okay, I'm going to go to marks. I'm going to say new record. Now when I'm doing this lookup, it takes me to the student object and it displays the student ID. Okay, I can either choose student 1 or choose student 2. Now I don't know what's the name of that student. Okay, then how can I add the marks to that student if I don't know his name? Correct? So I can add the student ID and the student name both here. So for this student ID, I can add his particular name and then choose that person. So, okay, for that I have to go to setup. I have to go to create objects, and in the student's data object, and to click on search layouts. In here, there's something called as lookup dialogues. Okay, I'm going to go and click on edit here. So this means that when I'm doing a lookup to this particular object, what are the fields that get displayed? Currently, there's only student ID. That is why we saw only the student 1 and student 2 as the IDs for students. Okay, if I add his student name and his email in here, let's say student name comes on top, and then if I save this, then whenever I do a lookup to this data object, then the student name and the student email address will come along with the student ID. Now let me add records to this marks object and show you how the lookup happens. When I click on new and when I click on lookup to the student data, you can see that the student ID along with the student name and his email address shows up. Okay, now I can easily add marks to different students. Okay, I'm going to choose student 2 now and say he scored this many marks in the first subject and this much marks in the second subject, and then I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to this object and then modify this view. I can modify this view by adjusting what appears over here by clicking on create new view. I'll say students marks. Okay, I'm going to go down and add subject 1 and subject 2 and the student data here. I'll do this and I'm going to save. So now if I click on marks, the serial number along with the student data and the marks in the 2 subjects appear. Now I have to create 3 more objects for professors, college and course. Now let me go back to my slides for a minute. These were the 3 objects I was talking about. Now let me first set up this object called college. This will have fields like college name, college address and college phone number. Now to create this college object, I had to go to setup, go to create and then click on objects here. I'm going to click on new custom object and give the name of the object as college details. Okay, and let's say the record name here will be college name. All right, and the data type will be text, and let me save this. So the new object called college details is created here. Let me add fields to this object. The fields here are the college email and the college phone number. All right, so I'm going to choose phone for this. Click on next and give the field label as college number and then click on next. I'll click on next again and save. Now let me add another field here. That's going to be the college address. Okay, the data type of this is going to be text. I'll click on next. The field label will be college address. The length, let's say, is going to be 50 letters or 50 characters, and then I'm going to click on next. I'll click on next again and then save this. Now my college object is successfully created. Let me add this college object to the tab here by going to create tabs and say new tab for college details, and the color is this. I'll click on next. I'm going to click on next again. I'll click on save now. As you can see, college details is visible here. So if I click on college details, I can add records to this college object. I'm going to click on new and let's say the college name is Harvard. Okay, let's say this is the college number and let's say the college address is, and for my reference, I'm going to give the college address as only the name of the country. Okay, so since I don't know the college address, I'm just going to give the country as USA, where the college is from. Okay, I'm going to click on save now. And if I go to college details, you can see that there's a Harvard entry here. If I click on this Harvard, then I'll get more details. Okay, now let me add new records here. Let's say another college as Oxford. This is the college number and the college address as the country the college is from, that is England, and then save this. Now if I go to college details, I have 2 entries for Oxford and Harvard. Now I'm going to create a new view for this also. Okay, the view name is going to be student colleges. Okay, and let's say I want to add the college address, the college number here. Okay, and I'm going to save this. As you can see, the college name along with the college address and the college number is visible here. Now let me go back to my PPT briefly. Okay, as you can see here, the college details will be present in this object. Okay, now this field will be a lookup to this college object. Okay, now that I've set up the master object here, I can go to the student data object and set up the field and set that as a relationship to this object. Now let me show you how to create this lookup relationship. It is very similar to how I created the master detail relationship. Alright, I'm going to go to my developer environment, click on setup. Here I'm going to choose the object I'm going to modify. It's going to be students data. Alright, I'm going to say go to students data, and if you go down you'll see the existing fields here. Okay, I'm going to add a new field over here. I'm going to click on new and say a lookup relationship to the college object. I'll click on next, and it is related to the object called college details. I'll click on next, and the field name will be college name. Then I'm going to click on next. I'll click on next again, and now save this. So now if you go back to the students data object, there will be a new field created for each of these students. Okay, now let me go to this record. As you can see, there's a new field called college, but this is an empty field because I created this field now, and this is a lookup to the college object. Now in the college details object, there are two entries for Oxford and Harvard. Now I can choose any of these two in this students data object. Now I'm going to click on student 1 and edit this. Okay, as you can see, the college details here, this is a lookup. Now when I click on this lookup, I can choose either Oxford or Harvard. So I'm going to choose Oxford and click on save. Now let's go to student 2, edit this and enter the college details as Harvard. Alright, and I'm going to save this now. Great. So I go back to students data,
and if I click on go, I will get my custom view, and in view these are the details that are currently present. So student ID is present, the student name is present, the country the student is from, his email address, and the phone number. These 5 fields are present. Okay, now the college details field can be added here because that was a field which I created very recently. Okay, to add it here, let me go to edit, and here let me come down, and you can see college details here. I'm going to add this and then save this. Okay, so as expected, we have the college details field also over here. So we have the details of which college the student went to. When I click on the student's data and when I modify this view, I get all the details here. Okay, now that I've created these 3 objects, let me show you the schema builder and show you how it looks. For that, let me go to setup, and under create, I'm going to click on objects. There is schema builder here. Okay, when I click on this, I get the 3 objects that I created. So I've created the student's data object, the college details, and the marks. So the student's data object here contains the details of all the students. The details like the student name, the student ID, the phone number, the country, and the college details. Okay. And the college details object here, it contains the college name, the college phone number, and the college address this particular student here belongs to. Okay, it's a lookup from this field here. And then the marks object will contain the different marks scored by the students. Okay, so now as I said earlier, I've created the student's data object, the college object, and the marks object. Okay, and these 3 objects here, they have a relationship. The relationship between a marks object and the student's data object is that of a master detail relationship, where the student's data is the master and marks is the child object. Okay, and the relationship between college details and student's data is a lookup relationship, where the student's data is the child object and the college details is the parent object. Now let me go back to my slides briefly. As you can see here, there are 2 more objects which are yet to be created. Okay, that is one is the professor object and the other is the course object. The professor object will contain the list of all the professors and their phone number. Okay, and the course object here will contain details about the course, like who is the professor for that course and who are the students. Now let me create these 2 objects in the developer environment. Okay, now that I'm here, let me go back to setup. I'm going to go down, I'm going to click on create, click on objects, and then say new custom object. First I'm going to create the professor object. Okay, let me give the name as professor. Okay, and then the record name as professor name. Okay, that's going to be my default record there. And I'm going to click on save. So this custom object called professors is created and it has a default field of professor name. Okay, now let me add the professor phone number and the professor details to this object. And since those will be custom fields, I'm going to click on new over here and choose the data type. I'm going to first store the phone number. So let's say the data type is phone, and I'm going to click on next. The field label is going to be professor number. Okay, I'm going to click on next, and let me click on next again, and then save this. So my custom object called professor is created. Now let me create the next object called courses. So I go back to objects under create. I'm going to click on new custom object and give the label as courses. Okay, the record name is going to be course name and the data type is going to be text. And I'm going to save this. So the custom object called courses is created and it has a standard field of course name. Now let me add these two objects to the tabs here. Okay, I've created the courses object and the professor object, and to add them here I need to go to tabs under create. Okay, I'm going to click on new custom object tabs. I'm going to choose the object as courses and give it this color and click on next, and again I'm going to click on next, and then I'm going to save this. Okay, so I'm going to click on new again to add the professor's object. I'm going to choose this color for this. I'll click on next. I'll come down, click on next again. With the same default settings, I'm going to click on save. As you can see, we have 5 objects here now. Okay, let me go back to my PPT again. So I've created all these 5 objects. Okay, well, I spoke about the relationship that the student data, the college and the marks objects have previously. Okay, I told you that there's a master detail relationship here and there's a lookup relationship over here. Okay, and then I created 2 new objects called the professor and the course. And now these 2 objects will have a relationship with the student's data object. Okay, these 3 together will have one single relationship called the junction relationship. Now this junction relationship is a combination of 2 master detail relationships. That means among these 3 objects I'll have 2 relationships. Okay, between the course object and the student data object I'll have a master detail relationship, and between the professor object and the course object I will have a master detail relationship. Okay, the course object will be the child object in both the relationships, and for the different courses it will have details about the professor and the students. Okay, so let me go back to my developer environment now and create the fields in the courses object and in the professor's object. Okay, in the professor's object I'm going to create 2 fields for the professor phone number and the professor address, and in the courses object I'm going to create the professor and the student data fields where there will be lookups to these 2 objects. So let me go back to my developer environment and show you how it's done.
Let's go to create objects. Now let's go to courses and add the custom fields here. The 2 fields will be the relationships. So I'm going to choose master detail relationship and click on next. I'll say it's the first one is related to professors and click on next. I'll click on next again. Okay, field name is professor. So the field name is professor. Click on next. I'll click on next again once more, and now I'll save this. Okay, I have to add another master detail relationship to the student data object. Click on next. I'll say this is related to student data. I'll click on next. Let's say the field name is student name, student underscore name, and go next. Click on next again once more, and now I can save this. Okay folks, so now that the courses object and the professors object is set up, let me add records to these objects. So first I have to add records to my professors object. Okay, I do that because later I'll be doing a lookup from the courses object to the professors. So there has to be content in my parent object. So I go to the professors object first. I'll add a record here. Let's say the professor name is Xavier and his phone number is this. I'll save it. Let's go to professors and add another record. This record is for the professor called Michael. This is phone number, and then I'll save this. Okay, if I go to professors, you can find that there are two entries here, one for Xavier and one for Michael. Now I can do a lookup to these professors from the courses object and also to the student's data object. So let me show you how I can do two lookups at the same time. Let me go to add new record. Let's say the course name is science. I'm going to do a lookup to the professor called Michael, and I'll configure the student to be student 1. Alright, I'm going to save this and create a new object. Let's say the course name is mathematics and the professor is Xavier and the student is student 2. Alright, and I'm going to save this. Now if I go to the courses object, you'll find that there are two entries for mathematics and science. Now I can modify this view and customize this view such that the professor name and also the student name appears over here. I can do that by going to edit the view, and here I can choose professors and student data and add them. Okay, now if I save this, then my view is modified. So along with the course name, I know which professor is teaching that course and who is the student for that person. Now since this is a master detailed relationship, I can have any number of professors for any number of students. That is, I can have Xavier to teach both these students, and I can also have Professor Michael to teach both these students. Or I can have the other way around. I can have both these teachers to teach one of these students here. Now let me show you an example of that. Let me go to students data and add a record there. Let's say add a new record. I'm going to give the student name as Joe. This is phone number. His email ID is joe@gmail.com. I'll say he's from France, and the college details as Oxford, and then save this. Okay, now if I go back to this courses object, I can create another record here. I can say the course is history. I can say the professor for this subject is Xavier and the student is Joe. Okay, I'm going to save this. Now if I go back to the courses object, now as you can see here, Professor Xavier is teaching two different courses. Okay, he's teaching history and he's teaching mathematics, and he's teaching two different students. So guys, by adding professors and students, you can create any number of records such that one professor is teaching any number of students for one particular course or for many courses. Alright, now that's how a junction relationship works. Let me show you the schema builder of this relationship by going to objects. Let me go to schema builder here and add the two objects here. They are courses and professors. So folks, as you can see, this schema builder shows the relationship between the different objects that I have created in this application. There's a student's data object, there's a college details object, there's a professor's object, there's a courses object, and a marks object. So folks, that is how you create different objects and set up relationships between them. I hope you all understood everything here. Okay, so if you have any doubts, you can put them in the comment box. Okay, so I have a question here. Questions from Rakesh is asking me, can you edit and delete even standard objects and custom objects? Rakesh, you can only edit and delete your custom objects. Alright, you can only edit a few of the standard objects, but you cannot delete any of the standard objects. Now let me show you how that's done. You need to go to setup, go to create objects. So here your custom objects are present. Okay, so you can delete your objects here, but your standard objects, you cannot delete them. Okay, I hope that answered your question, Rakesh. Okay, so there's a question from Ganapati here. He's asking me, how do you differentiate between standard and custom objects? So if there's a double underscore C after the name of the object, then it means that that is a custom object. So same thing with fields. So even in this object, there are standard fields and custom fields. So standard fields don't have any underscore C, okay, but whereas custom fields have underscore C here. I hope that answered your question. Okay, so I have another question here. The question is, can you show me a hands-on of security features from a user perspective? Sure, that's what I'm going to do now. So guys, what a Salesforce user sees depends on the profile he has been assigned to. Okay, now let me show you what are the different profiles available and how I can assign a profile to a particular user. And I can even customize the profile such that the user gets access to only certain objects. Supposing if I'm going to create a user for a particular student, then I would only want the student to be able to view the particular object. So I can do that by creating a new profile for him. Okay, now to create a new profile, I have to go to setup. Then you can go to manage users and click on profiles here. All right, these are the existing profiles here. Now you can create your own profile by clicking on this and clone one of the existing profiles. So what I'll do is I'll clone a profile called force.com free user. Okay, I'll give the profile name student marks. Okay, I'm going to save this. Now this is the new profile that I've created. Okay, if you go down, you can see here that the custom object permissions, they don't have any rights. So this profile cannot view or read any object here. Now let me edit this profile. I'm going to click on edit here. Let me go down. I'm going to click on read marks object. Okay, so if I click on marks object, even student data object can be read. That's because there's a relationship between the two of them. Now that I've checked this one, now if I save this profile, now this profile can view the marks scored by students. Now what I'll do is I'll create users for students and assign them this profile so that they can log in as students and view how much marks they have scored. Okay, now and give the first name as Vadi, the last name as V. This is the alias. Let's give the email as vardhan@edureka.co and the username as vardi@edureka.com. Okay, now let me give the nickname as VS. Okay, now I'm going to assign the user license as force.com free and the profile inside this license is student marks. Okay, so this profile has the updated permissions. The reason I've given vardhan@edureka.co is because this is my email address. When I click on save, this email address will get a confirmation that the username vardi@edureka.com has been created and they'll be given a link to verify that account. So that is why I've given my email address for simplicity purpose. Okay, now let me click on save. It says updating records. Great. Now let me open my Gmail account. It says welcome to your developer edition. Your username is vardi@edureka.com and I can log in by clicking on this link. Okay, so let me enter the password as this and I'm going to confirm the password here. In which city were you born? I'm going to keep the security question as Bangalore and I'm going to say change password. Alright, so this is my user. As you can see, this is the new user account that I created and when I log in, I have access to two different objects, students data and marks. Now let me show you what I can view if I click on this object. Okay, I can see the marks of two different students here. Okay, there are two different entries. Now let me modify this view by clicking on create new view. Let's say student marks. Okay, I'm going to go down. I'm going to add these details in there. I'm going to say add and save. So as you can see in my previous application, I had created these two entries in this marks object, okay, and the marks were these for these two students. And similarly, if I go to students data, I currently see no records, okay, but I can modify my view. Let's say students data, and if I go down, if I choose all those entries, then I can see which all students are part of this object. As you can see, there is student 1, 2, 3, and their names are Sam, Kate, and Joe, and they are from these countries. So this was the same objects that I created from my developer account. Okay, now that I've given access to this Vardy user, this user can log in and view only these details. Now that's how security works in Salesforce, guys. As an administrator, I can control what each user views. Supposing I want to give professors certain access, then I can log in as an administrator, create a new profile for only the professors, and give them access to only edit the marks of students. And then I can assign that profile to other professors. So by doing that, all my professors can add the marks and edit the marks of students, but they cannot do anything more than that. Okay guys, so that's the end of my hands-on session. If you have any doubts, you can just put it in the comment box and I'll answer them immediately. Okay, Guru's asking me a question. He's asking, what is the difference between Salesforce and Force.com? Salesforce is the SaaS company who are mainly into CRM, alright, and Force.com is a developer platform offered by Salesforce. Okay, so guys, does anybody else have any other doubts? Okay, so it seems like everyone has understood whatever I taught this session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Oh great, yeah, I see a yes and a thank you from a couple of people. Thank you guys for being a part of this session. So folks, that's the end of the session. If any of you are interested in learning Salesforce, you can check out our Salesforce certification training at www.edureka.co/Salesforce Foundation Combo. Happy learning from Edureka, and good night everyone.
Please be kind enough to like this video, and you can comment any of your doubts or queries, and I'll reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning.